Welcome back to the NWR Virtual Healthcare Conference. The next presentation is from Dr. Paul Gavin, who's the CEO of Avecho Biotechnology. Avecho develops and commercialises innovative human and animal health products using its proprietary drug delivery system known as TPM. TPM is derived from vitamin E using unique proprietary and patented processes and is proven to enhance the solubility and oral, dermal and transdermal absorption of drugs and nutrients. The company is about to embark on a phase 3 trial of its CBD capsule to treat insomnia. Just as a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them in throughout the presentation and we'll get to those at the end. But for now, I'll hand it over to Paul.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your time. As mentioned by Matt, my name is Dr. Paul Gavin. I am the Chief Executive Officer at Avecho Biotechnology. So for those of you that haven't been following our journey over the last 4 years, we've been driving this proprietary cannabidiol soft gel capsule towards TGA registration in Australia, with the final major piece of data that we really need being a pivotal phase 3 clinical trial. Now, we are just about to start that. We think we're going to be officially opening recruitment next week, which is a hugely exciting time for us. So not surprisingly, the bulk of the presentation today will focus on the phase 3 trial and the opportunity for Avecho with this cannabidiol soft gel capsule. As our safe harbor statement. So we have a very, very clear strategic focus. It's to complete the development, TGA registration and commercialization of this proprietary CBD capsule. Now, in doing so, it's going to create opportunities for us to license this product and other TPM cannabinoid dosage forms to third parties for different clinical indications, different geographies, or different markets. And this program is where we're spending the vast majority of all our time and resources. Now, the thing I wanted to highlight here, especially around the board and management, is the experience in pharma and biotech. So I say this again, just so that no one confuses us with a medicinal cannabis company. We are biotech. Board and management have significant experience over many years developing and commercializing pharmaceutical drug products. And we're taking all that expertise and we're throwing it at some of these pharmaceutical cannabinoids. Now, every CEO tells you that they are undervalued, but we think we're a spectacular opportunity at the moment at the price that we are, given that we're going into a pivotal phase 3 clinical trial. The majority of other biotechs in phase 3 at the moment on the ASX are sort of valued between 200 to 400 million. So we expect to see a significant re-rate as our trial commences and progresses. Now, as said, we're not native to medicinal cannabis, but the reason that we're here is because of the spectacular financial opportunity. So despite being relatively new, it is a ginormous global market already. So this slide will be out of date already, but it's legal use in over 30 countries now. In 2021, it was valued at 17.8 billion US. It's bigger than most pharmaceutical kind of opportunities you would shoot at. 65% of this market is North America, and it's expected to reach conservatively 73 billion by 2027 US. Now, the Australian market is smaller. We have medicinal use only. However, it's still growing really, really fast. And so I've actually updated this slide after one of the big national medicinal cannabis conferences that occurred last week, ACannabis. And it was reported there that the current market in Australia, despite being an unregistered medicine, is 350 million. And it's expected to reach 700 million for Australia alone by 2027. Now, the key thing to take away from this slide is despite the huge net worth of these markets, medicinal cannabis and cannabis is already a simple commodity. So in Australia already, there are 800 unregistered medicinal cannabis products up for sale. Everyone is essentially selling the same thing, simple oils or flour. The oils have very poor absorption. They're very crude dosage forms. And as a result, there's really little commercial differentiation between any of these products. And this presents a real commercial opportunity for anyone that can develop more advanced products that have superiority from performance and can provide commercial differentiation when compared to all the other generic products on the market. However, the cannabinoids themselves are pretty awful molecules to work with from an oral absorption perspective. So only 6% of medicinal cannabis that you would eat is ever absorbed to have any kind of therapeutic effect. The remaining 90% is metabolized and excreted. And so increasing the absorption of cannabinoids is a really valuable thing to do. And a lot of people in the biotech pharma space are looking at it, because if you can increase bioavailability, you can have a product with greater therapeutic benefits. You can shoot for new clinical indications that have previously required higher doses. You can reduce the cost to patients for obviously saving money. And as I mentioned earlier, commercial differentiation, which is everything for a biotech that's intending to, license product to pharmaceutical companies. There are really few medicinal cannabis companies that have the expertise to address these issues. This is a biotech pharma problem. And so, we're one of the only biotechs with a pharma background that has stepped into the space. And so this is the reason we stepped in. We really think not just our internal expertise across formulation development and clinical trials, but also our technology add real value. And so the image that you're looking at on the left is cannabidiol. So CBD, which is the main non-psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, the little glass vial that you can see on the right is just ultra high purity CBD in a vial that contains mostly water. And it's an oil-soluble drug, so it's completely insoluble. You can just see it just sits there as a solid aggregate. The vial on the left is exactly the same. It just has a little bit of our TPM in it. Our TPM forms nanoparticles. The nanoparticles dissolve and encapsulate the drug. And once we see that kind of profile, we're very comfortable after the last 20 years that we can develop formulations that can increase oral bioavailability or topical or transdermal absorption or increase solubility for injectable dosage forms. And so that's really crystallized by the graph on the right. This is a drug absorption experiment that we did a couple of years ago in dogs. The blue line that you're looking at is cannabidiol entering the bloodstream of dogs over time after a single dose of a CBD product called Epidiolex. We'll talk about that on the next slide, but Epidiolex is the only FDA-approved CBD product on the planet. It's for rare childhood epilepsy conditions, and it has 6% bioavailability. The red line is what happens if you dissolve our technology into Epidiolex for dosing. So simply dissolving our TPM into Epidiolex increases the drug absorption by about 400%, which is a hugely significant increase in absorption. And Epidiolex is really a way to highlight the value of pharmaceutical cannabinoids. So as I said, it's the only one approved. It's the only one on earth approved by the FDA and the TGA. There are some other combination products, but it's the only pure CBD product. It's for rare childhood epilepsy. It's an orphan drug, which means it's rarely prescribed. Despite all this, it was acquired for $7.2 billion by Jazz Pharma when it acquired GW Pharma in 2021. And this was the first time that regular, normal vanilla pharmaceutical companies had showed their interest in pharmaceutical cannabinoids. So it's anticipated, obviously, if you build a product for an indication that's much, much bigger than a rare orphan indication, it would be much more valuable. And so we're targeting a really big problem in the community at the moment, which is insomnia, which is becoming quite a large commercial opportunity. And so I probably don't have to tell you what it is. Probably most of you suffer it. It's essentially defined as difficulty initiating or maintaining sleep. It currently affects about 30% of the US population. It's starting to get a lot of media coverage for the problem that it is. Some of you may have seen SBS has just been running a documentary series called Australia's Sleep Revolution, which I think finished last night. Quite wonderfully for us, the documentary features a couple of the key opinion leaders that are working on our study, help to design it and helping to run it, such is the nature of the people that we have involved. And specifically in Australia, insomnia is becoming just a huge problem. So 40% of us are getting less sleep than we need. 60% of us are experiencing these symptoms sort of 3 to 4 times a week. Only 20 of us are reporting that we sleep uninterrupted. And for the Australian economy, it costs us $19.1 billion per annum. Now, currently, there are a few sort of approved medications for insomnia, benzodiazepines and melatonin. They don't work that well, or they have sort of give you a hangover the next day. There's a whole lot of unmet need for new medications. Despite not working that well, these products, we spend about 250 million per annum on them in Australia alone. And the global insomnia market is above $4 billion. Now, the interesting thing about Australia right now is a very unique commercial opportunity that involves our TGA. So some of you have probably heard me talk about it before. Our TGA is very dissatisfied with our medicinal cannabis industry, specifically because our medicinal cannabis industry, it's prescription only. It's all operating through the unregistered medicine schemes. So none of the medicinal cannabis products built here are registered with the TGA. They're all unapproved medicines that operate through the special access or the authorized prescriber scheme. Consequently, they haven't done clinical trials to prove what they work for or what they don't work for. They haven't done the work to show that they're safe. They haven't done the work to talk about the dosing conditions that you need. They haven't set up suitable pharmaceutical manufacturing. And consequently, our TGA, whose role in life is to ensure Australians have access to reproducible, safe, efficacious medicines, has stepped in to try and reconcile this. And what they have done to incentivize proper drug development is they've said that if you do phase 3 clinical trials with cannabidiol and you prove it works and you prove it's safe and you register it with the TGA in Australia, they will allow it to be an over-the-counter medicine. So what's an over-the-counter medicine? An over-the-counter medicine is one that's sold by the pharmacist in the pharmacy. It's when you talk to the pharmacist at the back and it's behind the counter. It means you no longer have to pay to see a GP and you no longer have to pay to receive a prescription. So it is a huge commercial opportunity. You have direct access to the entire Australian adult population at any time. And Australians spend over $5 billion a year on OTC medications. Now, the TGA has confirmed that insomnia is an appropriate indication for an OTC CBD medicine. And we met with the TGA in February to run through all the final decisions that we'd made around our phase 3 protocol and our submission strategy. It was a very, very good meeting. We were really, really happy with it. And essentially the outcome of the meeting was that they had no recommended changes to any of the decisions that we've made, so we can run full steam ahead. Now, really places us, especially in light of some recent failures, which I'll talk about in a minute, as being one of the first, if not the only company to achieve TGA registration in Australia of an OTC CBD product. Now, our phase 3 study design. This is a very brief snapshot of the study design. We built it using the FDA and the European guidance documents for insomnia studies. The risk with this opportunity is that you water down the phase 3 clinical trial, making it appropriate for an Australian OTC medicine indication, but then forget that you subsequently want to register it in overseas markets. So we've designed this study to be a rock solid pharmaceutical trial that will be acceptable to both the FDA and the EMEA. Now, as part of that process, we also examined the last 2 FDA-approved insomnia drugs, Avecho and QUVIVIQ. We took everything we could out of their study design, and we actually built our protocol based on those approved medications. And so essentially we'll have 3 treatment groups. We'll have placebo and then 2 doses of CBD, because the TGA asked us to do at least 2 doses of CBD. We'll be doing daily sleep diaries, questionnaires every 2 weeks. The primary endpoints will essentially be, reducing the severity of insomnia through the treatment of CBD. Now, last year, I guess when the TGA announced this OTC opportunity, it was met with a lot of excitement in the space. A lot of the medicinal cannabis companies also pursued this, but, being medicinal cannabis companies, they haven't really done much in the way of drug development before. This was their first clinical trial program, and all of them failed last year. So we're essentially of the original cohort that said we were pursuing this opportunity. We are now the last one left because everyone else failed in their phase 3 clinical trials. Now, they failed for very good reasons. We'd been out in the public domain prior to that, talking about the risks of these trials, and the reported reasons for their failure were very much in line with what we foreshadowed as being the big pieces to look out for. So the bullet points on the left are the key differences from our study compared to the ones that failed. Any one of these alone would make a big difference, but all of them together make for a very, very robust trial. And so essentially, the TGA said that you can use a maximum daily dose of 150 milligrams of cannabidiol. So we're using the maximum dose. For whatever reason, a couple of our peers in the space only went to 100 milligrams, so they left 50 milligrams on the table. We've got significantly higher patient numbers. So they mainly dosed around 200 patients. We're dosing 519. We've got much higher insomnia scores. So our insomniacs have much more severe conditions than them, which gives us a bigger scope to see improvement through the CBD action. We've got a long dosage period, so 8 weeks. And the two key features really is we have an interim analysis after 200 patients. So after 200 patients, the statisticians look at the data in a blinded fashion and they say, based on what we're seeing here, you'll need another 50, 100, 200 patients, whatever it is, to maximize the chance of success with your phase 3 trial. It's like an inbuilt cheat code. It's completely standard in pharmaceutical drug development, but it wasn't present in any of the medicinal cannabis phase 3 trials. And the last one is really methods to minimize the placebo effect. So we were very forward back at the end of 2022, telling everyone the placebo effect was a huge risk for these studies. We know everyone on the trial, including those in our placebo will report improved sleep, because that's the way the placebo effect works. People, even when they're taking a pretend medication, their mind convinces them that, you know, they're getting a therapy and it's working. So you really need mechanisms in your trial to account for the placebo effect. The first 2 trials that failed last year specifically announced that they failed because of the placebo effect. So we have built-in methods to account for that. Again, they're pretty standard in pharmaceutical trials, but they weren't included in any of the phase 3 trials conducted to date that failed. So all of these put together make this currently the world's largest, most rigorous cannabidiol phase 3 trial, looking at sleep as an indication. So we think we're in a really good position to get maximum effect. And so just quickly, so that the timelines. So we spent most of last year raising capital to fund the study and doing all the manufacturing activities and building the database and everything that would allow us to commence. We're now ready to go. So we think we'll open recruitment next week, which we'll have an announcement for. We'll be recruiting and dosing patients over the remainder of this year. And the intention is to get to the interim analysis at the end of the year. So the interim analysis is obviously a huge endpoint. I mean, if anyone's followed Dimerix, you can see what an interim analysis does for a company. And so, we're hoping to get there by the end of the year. Whether we get there earlier or later than described here will be a function of the recruitment rate. And so we'll have a good guide as to how that's looking as we kick off recruitment and we see how many patients are interested in participating in the study. Now, just lastly, the opportunity here for us on the commercial side is quite large. And so, as you heard me mention, 4 other Australian medicinal cannabis companies went down this same path and they all failed last year, which leaves us as the last horse left in the race. Now, we have significantly more drug development and clinical trial expertise than all of them. Our phase 3 trial is significantly larger and more rigorous, which maximizes the chance of success. The last trial that failed was particularly interesting because it kind of de-risked and validated all the decisions that we've made in our trial design. So the last trial that failed used 2 doses, 50 milligrams and 100 milligrams. In post hoc statistical analysis. So it failed its primary endpoint, but when they dug into the stats at the end, they determined that 50 milligrams didn't work, but 100 milligrams did. What does that tell us? It tells us they set up a dose response, but they didn't go high enough. So they went to 100, we're going to 150, and they didn't dose enough patients. They dosed 208, we're dosing 519. So their results really do validate that our trial design is appropriate and rigorously designed to capture the effect of CBD for sleep. Now, the really cool thing about the terrifying thing, the cool thing about being the last group remaining is that if we succeed, then all the potential licensees in this space will have to come to us. So we know all the pharmacy chains want their own registered CBD product in Australia, Chemist Warehouse, Terry Price, all those guys. We know the tier above them, the Australian generics companies in the pharmacy space, you know, Arotex, Blackmores, all those guys, they want their own registered pharmaceutical CBD product. And the guys above them, Haleon, you know, Perrigo, Dr. Reddy's, they all want their own registered CBD product. So if we are the only one who's fortunate enough to be successful here, we'll get to deal with all those guys in an auction for the product once it's shown to be successful. And so, yeah, separate to the phase 3 trial, I mean, that was obviously that's 100% our focus at the minute. But being a platform technology company with assets all over the place, we have built further products that are differentiated for the cannabis space. So THC edibles or cannabinoid edibles, we've shown that the inclusion of our TPM into a THC gummy increases the rate of absorption, so it works in about 15 minutes instead of an hour, and increases the magnitude, so it's a much stronger experience. Now, we're currently looking at the medicinal applications for something like this, and currently it looks like there's good opportunities in the elderly kind of dementia space, as well as potentially pediatric conditions, because the children at the moment on Epidiolex are having to drink mils and mils of sesame oil each day, which is obviously not ideal. So there's some real opportunities there. But the Americans and the Canadians who care less about medicinal and care more about recreational, you tell them the gummy story, and all they hear is me telling them that I can get their patients high in 15 minutes instead of an hour, which is, again, in their market, huge commercial opportunity. So we have zero intention ourselves of putting our toe in that market. We are going to stay medicinal and pharmaceutical, but we have no difficulty licensing the use of the product and the technology to some of the larger companies in that space. And at the moment, we've had our gummy reproduced in the US and Canada, and they're undergoing testing at the moment. And hopefully we can announce some sort of commercialization arrangements with North American companies on the gummy moving forward. Likewise, we've got a topical pain gel that we'd previously commercialized with Novartis. We stripped out the drug from that. We replaced it with CBD, and we did a small proof of concept osteoarthritis with fingers and hands study a couple of years ago. Worked really well. Significant increases in grip strength, significant reductions in pain, where we're working up larger protocols at the moment with our topical cannabinoids for some of those local pain indications. So yeah, just to finish off, the value drivers for the company, we have this portfolio of proprietary cannabinoid products which are differentiated. So as I say, huge global market, no differentiation. We're coming in to build some products that we hope everyone wants. We have this pivotal phase 3 trial going to start next week, hoping to get to the interim analysis towards the end of the year. So really defined timeline for a key inflection point. Targeting over-the-counter registration in Australia, followed by the rest of the world, which is, again, huge commercial opportunity given everyone else has currently failed. We have further clinical trials, which I haven't spoken about, with our CBD capsule being funded by third parties. Further cannabinoid products under development. And again, I didn't get to talk about these, but there are partnerships with other pharmaceutical companies overseas for some of the non-cannabinoid products. So it's going to be a very, very big, exciting year. Hopefully lots of news around our phase 3 trial and also around hopefully some key licensing arrangements with some of the stuff in overseas cannabis markets. So yeah, very happy to answer any questions that you may have. And if you can't sleep, keep an eye out for the announcement next week, because it will give you instructions on how you can participate in our phase 3 clinical trial. So Matt, I'll throw it back to you for questions.
Thanks very much, Paul. Really good summary. Again, if anyone has a question, please feel free to type it in using the Q&A panel within Zoom, and we'll get to them shortly. We've got about 5 more minutes. On that note that you just mentioned at the end there, Paul, when it comes to recruiting patients, can you just speak to, I know that some of the other players hit some issues in terms of speed of recruitment and getting patients. Can you just speak to how comfortable you are with that from your perspective?
Look, we do acknowledge that recruitment can be a bit tricky. So very specifically with us, we have very, very specific inclusion and exclusion criteria. So we are looking for a very specific kind of person. And as I sort of described earlier, we're looking for more severe insomnia sufferers than the other guys in the space. But to augment recruitment, we've actually engaged some dedicated recruitment firms outside of the normal avenues of the clinical trial sites to use social media and all the rest and really maximize the outreach that we have to maximize the rate of recruitment. So we're going to have sites in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth to maximize the catchment. We 100% know there's no shortage of people that can't sleep. It'll be specifically finding the people that fit our very, very specific inclusion criteria. But yeah, with the additional spend we've got on recruitment, we're hopeful that that's pretty rapid.
And just again, I think maybe you did get it in there. How many people in total for the phase 3 trial?
500, we're aiming to dose in total 519. The interim analysis will be at about 200. So our interim analysis is as big as most of the other phase 3s that failed.
And some other questions come through with regards to the placebo effect. How, I know you touched on it a little bit, but how will you go around avoiding that with your study?
I can't tell you. So very, very, very specifically, I appreciate the question. I can't put out in the public domain how we are going to do it, because then obviously potential patients who are coming onto the study will know.
Yep. Another question is, how long will it be from first patient to last for the enrolment process?
Well, at the moment, I mean, the initial line of sight is the interim analysis. I'm not avoiding the question. The interim analysis is going to tell us how many patients we need to subsequently dose. So that'll be the piece. So I can tell everyone, we'll get to the interim analysis, we think, towards the end of the year. We'll be able to update people with the timelines as we go, because we'll actually get a feel for what the recruitment rate is in the next few months for that specific kind of patient that we're looking for. Once we get to the interim analysis, in the expectation that it says, yes, it's looking good, you need to dose another X number of patients. By that stage, we think we'll be able to throw much more resources and probably partnered resources at it to increase the rate of recruitment to finish the remaining subjects much faster in 2025.
It's maybe when you don't want to crystal ball on too much, but should you be successful in phase 3, how quickly do you expect you'd potentially be able to get an approval from the TGA?
So we will be getting, the minute the interim analysis looks positive, we'll start building the submission dossier around all the sort of things that will go into the package. So the CMC package and the toxicology and all the rest, so that that's ready to go. So that the minute the trial unfolds and is completed, we can just plug in the remaining phase 3 data. We've been told at the moment that the TGA is thinking that after submission, it's realistically going to be probably a 200-day review before something's approved. That's not whether it's just ours, that's whether it's anyone's. The key piece to mention though is that a TGA submission is probably unlikely to be ours. So this product will be licensed and partnered to a pharmaceutical company. And very specifically, it'll probably be sooner rather than later if the interim analysis works, in which case it'll be pharma taking that submission package to the TGA and using their resources to get it done as fast as possible.
And just on that note of pharma, you talked about that will come along should you have successful results, but can you provide a bit of context on any interest that was shown, prior to now, on maybe some groups who looked at taking on some of the risk with you?
Yes, yep. I mean, we have spoken to a bunch of groups already. We've spoken to a bunch of groups that have indicated interest. I mean, if you've followed the space, you've seen that some of these groups have already put their flag in the sand with, partnerships with CAN and partnerships with BOD and partnerships with Amiria. All of those products have now failed. So those people are back on the menu looking for product. So there's a whole lot that haven't raised their flag yet to telegraph their interests. So yeah, there's a lot of them, as I said, across those 3 tiers. A lot of them want to go, but just want the comfort that there's a signal that CBD works for sleep. So that's probably the interim analysis.
Great. Well, that takes us right on to finishing time, Paul. So thanks very much for your presentation. If anyone has any further questions, as it says on screen there, you've got Paul's email address and also Investor Hub to ask questions. So please feel free to reach out that way. But thanks to everyone for joining, and thank you, Paul, for the presentation.
Thank you.
And our next presentation today is in about 10 minutes from now, one of our private companies in Virex. So for anyone interested, please feel free to join that one. Thanks for today.